good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our regular scheduled village board meeting on October 8th, 2024. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Line roll call, please.
Mayor DeFold.
Here.
Trustees Amos.
Here.
Brockman.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Chapman.
Here.
Luciano.
Here.
And Selfridge.
Here.
Okay, everybody is here this evening. We do have a quorum to conduct the village business. Are there any citizens wishing to address the village board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda for the evening. Item number 1 will be approval of the regular meeting minutes for September 24th, 2024. Approval of accounts payable in the amount of $558,966.17. Approval of the payment in the amount of $64,001.39 to PT Federal Construction for the 2024 MFT resurfacing project. Item 4 is approval of a payment in the amount of $212,690.70 to Performance Pipelining for the sanitary sewer rehabilitation basin number 6 project. And item number 5 will be approval of a payment in the amount of $51,749.95 to Compan for Rivers Edge Park Phase A. Is there any items a trustee that needs any further questions or clarification or any other questions on that consent?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Motion trustee Luciano, second trustee Carroll. Roll call, please.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
And Amos.
Yes.
Consent agenda has been approved. Moving on to this evening's for reports and communications. Lana, is there anything that you had received prior to this agenda being printed for tonight?
No, sir.
Thank you. With that, we will make certain to announce already trick-or-treat hours will be, of course, October 31st, 2024 from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. as we historically recognize on Halloween. 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And with that, we'll move into our order of business for this evening. Business item number 1, the consideration for approval of an ordinance amending Title 10 of the Shorewood Village Code regarding towing services in an I-2 zoning district. This item is up for a first read. Trustee Brockman and Ms. Amos.
Thank you, Mayor. This came before us at our last planning and zoning meeting. We did hold a public hearing on this. We had 3 or 4 individuals that did speak against it. And not only this agenda item, but also the next agenda item. And despite that, the commissioners brought it forward with a 5-0 vote in favor of this board approving it. So, Natalie, I'm sure you have some additional thoughts on this.
Sure. In each zoning district, we have a list of permitted uses and a list of special uses. In the I-2 zoning district, the uses are mostly related to industrial type things, trucking business and whatnot. There are some special uses related to automotive and truck repair. Most of our automotive uses fall within the B4 zoning district though, including the towing service business. B4 is our automotive service district. Back in the 90s, it was very popular to create the automotive service districts because people thought that it was best to cluster those uses. Over the years, we've learned that actually people prefer to have those businesses among other businesses so that they're, for convenience and compatibility of uses. So we are proposing to add towing services as a potential conditional use in the I-2 zoning district. The definition is on the screen. If this was approved, then basically if somebody was interested in operating a towing business in Shorewood in the I-2 district, they could apply for a conditional use permit. There would then be a conditional use permit public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They'd consider the case and refer it to you. We thought about this and we are proposing this because we did receive a request from Anderson's Towing, who was interested in locating at 300 Amon Dodge, which is in the I-2 zoning district, and we had no mechanism to bring that forward, so we're proposing this text amendment, and if that's approved, then Mr. Anderson can bring forward his petition and request you to consider that conditional use.
Okay, very good, Natalie. Council, if you could answer a question for trustee Selfridge and I, but that night, the public hearing got out of control as far as time, and it's, on the board, it's got 3 minutes. Is there a way we could state 4 minutes? Just
You know, on a public hearing, you really can't set a time limit. What you can do is you can try to control repetitive comments or repetitive speech. You know, the people getting up and saying the same thing time after time. But a public hearing is designed, you know, to allow ample time to make comments and to ask questions, cross-examine witnesses and things like that. So
we can't put that on there.
You can't put a time limit on there, but the chair can control it by, you know, trying to eliminate repetitive comments or things like that.
What about coming to talk several times? So you get
No, I think you could, you know, tell them you've got one time.
one time
Yeah.
as long as you want.
Yeah, I would just set that forward. And in fact, Mr. Brockman, I think we've got some rules that we prepared for some larger public hearings sometime back. Maybe we ought to brush those off and we could use those
Good
a little
idea.
bit more.
Good idea. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or concerns about agenda item number 1? If there isn't, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance amending Title 10 of the Shorewood Village Code regarding towing services in the I-2 zoning district and waive the second read.
I'll second that.
Motion Brockman, second Chapman. Roll call, please.
Carroll,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Luciano,
Yes.
Selfridge,
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
And Brockman.
Yes.
All right, business item number 1's been approved. Moving on to business item number 2, which is a consideration for approval of an ordinance granting a conditional use for a towing business for Anderson's Towing, 300 Amendage. This item is also for a first read. Back over to trustee Brockman.
Thank you again, Mayor. Like I stated earlier, we did hold a public hearing on this as well. Same 3 or 4 people spoke against the project. And, you know, that on-site service that we're trying to avoid, get out of the town, get out of town with it. And they've caused so much harm down there that everybody thinks that this site's going to be the same deal. Well, it's completely different. But anyway, the commissioners came here with a 5-0 vote in favor of this board approving it. And Natalie, you want to give us a little more details, please?
So this property is at 300 Amon Dodge. It's the second property from the end of Amon Dodge Drive on the north side of the street. There was a building there. It was larger than the one that you see on the screen, but it was reduced back in 2016. And at that point, they made the gravel lot, which is 130 by 130 feet. There's also a paved area with some parking outside of the fence as well as some parking inside of the fence. The building is currently occupied by Hammer Express. This is a logistics company. They run their own trucks and they have a bunch of owner-operators who run trucks out of there. They use the office space for the coordination end of the business and the back area for parking their trucks. They do operate theoretically around the clock, but most of the time they're leaving early in the morning and coming back later in the evening. Hammer Express is going to be reducing their business services in Shorewood, so they'll be using 2 of the offices, and then the Andersons are going to be taking the rest of the building, and then they'll also be using 3 semi-truck parking spaces in the gravel area, and then the Andersons would be using the remaining spaces for their business. Anderson's Towing, I'm sure you've all heard of. They've been in the area for 50+ years. They do towing for individuals, for body shops, and for the police. They'll have a dispatch office and a temporary holding lot. They like the property a lot because there's a security fence around the property, that it does have slats for screening, and I believe it's a wood fence in back, and because it's got a security gate, I believe they're also gonna have a security system there. They are planning to have, anywhere between 10 and 50 total vehicles. Typically, they'll have about 2 to 3 visits a day. Night visits do happen. When they did the study of their most recent activity, it's been every 3 or 4 months. every 3 or 4 nights. The closest house is about 164 feet, although theoretically they could add on to it and be a little bit closer, but there is a pretty significant landscape buffer between the house and the fence for the property. You know, after some of the questions at the Planning and Zoning Commission, I thought it would maybe be helpful to see if this were like maxed out and everybody was parked there, what it would look like. So I did this little drawing. Those are 3 72-foot long trailers, well, semis and trailers, and then I put in 50 cars. I don't think they're really gonna hit 50 cars there, but just to see what it looks like, I put in 50 cars. They're the size of a Ford F-150, which is bigger than 85% of the cars on the market, so it's what you design parking lots to. And it looks to me like it works, so that's just the gravel area showing you what it would look like. There were concerns about, you know, noise, lights, surveillance, and environmental concerns. I think they've done what they need to do to address those, so staff's recommendation is for approval, as was the Planning and Zoning Commission's.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. The applicant is here. Dan, did you want to say anything?
No, I think it was covered well by Natalie.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance granting a conditional use for a towing business for Anderson's Towing, 300 Amadage, and waive the second read.
Second?
Motion trustee Brockman, seconded trustee Chapman. Roll call, please.
Chapman?
Yes.
Luciano?
Yes.
Selfridge?
Yes.
Amos?
Yes.
Brockman?
Yes.
And Carroll.
Yes.
Item number 2 has been approved. Item number 3 will be consideration for approval of an ordinance granting a conditional use for a planned unit development, conditional use for a health and fitness center, and site plan approval for the Village of Shorewood YMCA, 1801 West Jefferson Street. This item is also up for a first read. Trustee Brockman.
Thank you again, Mayor. Commissioners, as well as I, were very happy to see this come forward, and we've all seen the ground that's been worked over here already, so they're getting closer to putting the building up. And we did hold a public hearing. We had 2 concerns. One was, remind me again, Natalie, was about the walnut trees.
The walnut trees and
what was the other concern? The water management, which way it was gonna go or something?
yes.
Okay. Other than that, there was nobody else spoke against it or for it. And do you have anything else you want to add, Natalie? Go right ahead.
Sure. So the YMCA, as you all know, is coming to the southwest corner of Jefferson and Windstone. Here's the site plan. Highlighted in blue, the area that's the building. It is 58,409 square feet as drawn. They've also planned for some expansion areas for future, which are shown and highlighted in dark green. There's parking on the east side of the site as well as on the south side of the site, highlighted in blue. And then in green is a potential parking expansion area should they need more parking in the future. We think this would be triggered, you know, when they put up the building additions and whatnot. In terms of the site, 2 arrows are pointing to playfields. On the west side of the site, you've got more traditional playfields. On the north side of the site, they're planning to build a dry bottom retention pond that will be used for practice fields, summer camp, and things like that. They are planning a walking path around the building, around the property. So this will go along, it'll be along Windstone, it'll be along 52, it'll circle the field area, and it's a 6-foot wide asphalt path. And then they, as future potential additions, they've got 2 buildings planned. One is a pavilion and one is a concession stand restroom building. And those are really future, so they're asking for permission to locate them in those areas, but it's not, they're not planned to be built in 2024 or 25. They've provided a landscape plan. Got some arrows on there, but I know everybody's concerned about the walnut trees on the east side of the site, rightfully so, because they're absolutely beautiful. They have tried to preserve as many of the walnut trees as possible, so really the only place where they planned to remove them was where it was absolutely necessary to provide access to the site. They've made some changes to the parking lot landscaping. Typically, we have landscaping that's sporadically put throughout the parking lot, you know, about every 20 parking stalls, and then landscaping around the perimeter. They wanted to do something a little bit more dramatic in this case to mirror sort of the formality of the walnut trees as you come down the street. So they've got a center median with a number of overstory trees, very similar to what you see coming into Village Hall. And they've actually reduced the amount of landscaping along the perimeter. Their thoughts are that people are going to come to pick up their kids when they're practicing for games and stuff like that, and are going to want to enter right into the lawn, so they thought it was more practical to have that area open and to focus the landscaping on the center of the lot. There is foundation landscaping. Majority of it is clustered on the east side of the building, facing Windstone, because that's really the main entrance, but they do have some foundation landscaping, albeit a little bit less, along the north side of the building, facing 52. At the corner of the space, I should have pointed this out on the map, but there is a kids' play area, so you'll be able to access that directly from the building, and that will be fenced in. There is a berm behind the lot, basically that backs onto the south part with some trees. It's about a 6-foot tall berm with some evergreen trees. I believe there are 18. Along US 52, they're proposing to have street trees, which we think will be good because it will not only make the street look nice, but it'll also offer some protection from the street, as well as a 4-foot tall wrought iron look fence. They got a little pollinator garden, and that's basically the landscaping plan. It is a PUD, so in a PUD you can deviate a little bit from the ordinance. In this case, they've reduced down some landscaping in some sections, but added more in the other sections. It's kind of a unique lot because so much of it is recreational use as opposed to just passive landscape areas like you'd see in a regular commercial development. Just to kind of show you some of the detailed plans, this is the line drawing that shows the site. Here's sort of a zoom in of the different trees and landscaping on this was on the east side of the site and on the west side of the site. This is the area as you come in. It'll be sort of a grand area like we have outside with parking on either side of it. And they've also got landscaping along the front of the building, which will be quite aesthetically pleasing. I'll talk a little bit later about a transformer they're putting up front, but they are planning to landscape that with different types of shrubbery. And as typical, they've provided a photometrics to prove that their lighting will meet the village standard. This is what the building will look like. There are actually color sample boards in the back, as well as a nice colored layout in the back if you wanted to see it. And I did take pictures of the Morris YMCA to show you guys what it looks like too, so we'll go through those. These are the south and east elevations. You can really kind of see more from this, but basically it's the building's got some sloping roof lines. It's got some, nice windows along the front, and it does have a couple of different heights. It kind of varies a little bit because you've got higher heights where the gym is and where the pool is and stuff like that, so it does bounce up and down a little bit. These are the north and west elevations. And these are the building sections as though you slice it in the middle. Katie LeClaire is here from the YMCA, so she'll do some presentation about what's going to be specifically in the building. She'll be able to describe that much more eloquently than I can, so I'll leave that to her. This is the gym. The gym will be up towards Jefferson Street, and the way the gym is designed, they'll have the nice big gym area in the center, and they'll have curtains that can come down separating the gym from the track that will surround it. So you'll be able to have, volleyball games going on in the main gym as, the adults or the parents, go run or walk around the perimeter. And then this is the floor plan, which Katie will get into in much more detail. Matt was out and did a tour of the YMCA and took some pictures. So this is the inside of the gym. This is the Morris YMCA, which is very similar to what's being built here. This is the gym. This is the pool that's going in. I believe it's an 8-lane lap pool. And here's some other pictures. This is the pool viewing area. And because it's a PUD, they have requested some exceptions, so I'll go through those and paying a little bit more attention to some that we had some questions about. Typically, you're allowed to have a 50 square foot monument sign. In this case, they've asked for a 72 square foot monument sign. We think it's appropriate at this location because they'll have the YMCA symbol. They'll also have the Village of Shorewood on there, and they'll have a message board. They typically in a commercial district or really any district, you're allowed to have a 3-foot tall fence, a decorative fence, provided that it doesn't enclose any yard. In this case, because they're gonna have kids playing in that pond and it's along Jefferson, they've asked for permission to put up a 4-foot tall wrought iron looking fence. The picture on the bottom is the Plainfield YMCA, and you can see that it's a similar type of fence that they'd like to put there. I'll go more into detail about the transformer and the rooftop mechanical equipment because there were some questions about those. But the other thing is basically landscaping per plan. As I mentioned, there's some variations based on how they design the site for their use. In terms of rooftop equipment, a lot of the commercial buildings that we see have flat roofs with parapet walls that screen the rooftop equipment. In this case, because it's a YMCA, they've got a lot of rooftop equipment. They've got a lot of different classrooms and spaces, and there's a pool area, and there's a gym area. So there's a lot of need for mechanical equipment. They've also got some sloping roofs, which makes the traditional method of screening it by a parapet wall difficult. When we went to the Plan Commission agenda, we had been reviewing some sightline exhibits that did a good job showing how from different parts this rooftop equipment was screened, but we really wanted to dive into it a little bit more with the YMCA to make sure that we were truly getting the screening we expected. And we discovered that in some areas it was a little bit lacking, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Screening from Walnut Trail, oh gosh, okay. So screening from Walnut Trails is basically our biggest concern. In that area, the roof line slopes down. So from Walnut Trails, you'll be able to see some of the rooftop equipment on the top. The top right-hand picture is the Morris YMCA, and you can see there's a couple of larger units that you can see, as well as a couple smaller ones in between them. We talked to the YMCA about putting up rooftop screens, which I'm sure you've seen on a lot of different buildings, the louvered screens. We thought that was a good solution, but then when they started looking into it, especially in the last few days, they realized, one, it's going to cost like $150,000, $200,000, a lot of money, and two, it's really going to look like a lot of rooftop screens on a roof and not necessarily going to look great. So they're proposing something a little different, something even a little different than what's written in the packet, and that's the idea of putting an additional fence along the top of the berm adjacent to Walnut Trails. So Walnut Trails has a 6-foot solid fence. They would put the berm and they would put a 7-foot solid vinyl privacy fence, as well as the trees to provide the screening from the residents. And then the bottom part is an architect rendering where they're showing that if they were to do that, they would fully screen the view of the rooftop equipment from the adjacent properties. On the YMCA's property itself, if you were on that south side of the building and really cocked your head, you'd be able to see it a little bit, but the residents would be completely blocked. Screening from Jefferson, their line of sight exhibits showed it would be screened. This is a picture of the Morris YMCA, which has the exact same equipment. You can see in the corner, you can see a little tiny bit of the pool equipment, but for the most part, the building does a great job of screening it. From Windstone, for the most part, the building does a great job of screening it. This is Morris. You can see a tiny, tiny bit of the top of the equipment if you stand at just the right place in the parking lot, but for the most part, the building screens it, and they have provided an exhibit showing that from Windstone, because of the grades, it would be fully screened. From the west, coming down Jefferson, you would see very little, if anything. The top left picture shows what it would look like from Jefferson. If you stood on the ComEd lines, you would probably see a little bit of equipment, but not a heck of a lot. Essentially what they're asking for is an exception in the PUD where they'd be able to screen stuff from the adjacent property with a fence, and a little bit of slack for the couple of little places where you'll be able to see stuff from the road. Given the type of building, I think that you would really not notice it if you weren't looking at it. I think you see stuff like this all the time on schools and gyms and other buildings like that, so I don't think you would notice it. I can't tell you how many times I've been by the Plainfield YMCA, and it wasn't until last week when I really looked carefully that I realized that, yeah, you can see their rooftop equipment there. So it's not, I don't think you'd necessarily have noticed it if you weren't looking for it. But just food for thought, happy to answer any questions about that. The other thing that was in there was a request with regard to the transformer screening. They have a transformer that will go basically at the northeast corner of their site. They've provided screening around it. Bottom line, we just don't know exactly how tall that transformer is going to be. They've got to work with ComEd on that, so we've got a caveat in there where they'll work with staff, and if the screening doesn't quite cover it, they'll add some landscaping to make sure it does. But those are basically the questions. Before the YMCA comes up, do you have any questions of me that I can answer?
Anybody have any questions for Natalie thus far? Yeah.
For the photometric plan,
Yeah.
you said that the engineer reviewed it. So I guess maybe go back to that slide. So does that encompass the expanded parking lot or just up to what they're building up until this point?
It encompasses the whole lot, so it does encompass the expanded parking lot.
And then, so when they look at that, because it backs up to residential, so is there light going towards the townhomes that are back there?
So our landscape code doesn't ever allow you to cast light onto properties, right? So if you stood there with a light meter, they can't be casting light onto the properties. In reality, if you stood on the residential property and looked at the building, you would see a light, but it wouldn't be like, you know, if you picture like a shadow, like the opposite of a shadow, it wouldn't be casting light onto the properties.
We kind of did something similar when Salon Suites went in, when they were updating their lights, so it didn't shine into Shorewood.
Okay.
So there was no negative light spill into the adjacent property.
And is there any ordinance where like it dims at a certain point? Like, you know, if they have brightness when people are coming, I forget the hours, if they're 9 PM or 10 PM, does it dim or is it full bright all night?
It doesn't dim. What they tend to do is that they'll check the photometrics, and if they need to, they'll put a screen on the back of the light so that the light doesn't go past a certain point. I don't know if they're
I think
intending
your
to.
question is, are they gonna be on all night?
Correct.
They could probably attest to that.
I
I mean,
didn't
like
know if that was a village code.
Home Depot, for example, they shut them all off.
Yeah, like car dealerships, a lot of times,
Yeah.
after hours you dim them, so it doesn't disturb the neighbors.
Yep, we'll certainly take a look into whether we can do that. So currently we do have all of our lights that remain on, but we make sure that they are screened if necessary to make sure that they're not interrupting any properties that would surround. But we'll look into seeing whether we can dim them.
I think it would be important, right, because you're back, like, they were there first, right, so this is kind of a unique build, and I think everyone appreciates why, but I just try not to disturb them as much as possible.
Absolutely, and we appreciate that, and we'll certainly work to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, like you referenced, I know Home Depot shuts their lights off, some of the other plazas do,
Yeah,
other.
or, you know, shut off 70%, right,
Correct.
because you still want security light, for
Right.
sure, but at least it dims it overall for residents.
Right.
Because they're gonna be in their backyards, they don't wanna look at bright lights all night.
Makes sense. And from a village code perspective, it's not written into the code that they have to turn off lights
Okay.
at a certain time. I mean, we
Trust
could look
in
at it in the
the
future, but right now it's not in there.
Yeah, I was gonna, like, for a PUD, I guess you could, technically, right? Or
Yeah.
no?
You could.
Okay,
Trustee Luciano, do you have a question?
I'm done, go ahead.
No, I was waiting for him. Where exactly is the monument sign gonna be?
The monument sign is going to be on the northeast corner of the site. So if you, if they put the screen back, you'll see up at the top. Right here, let me see if I can circle it. Right in this area here. Oh, you can't really see. See where Katie's standing?
Yep, the
Right to the
northwest
left of it, there is a rectangle, and it's, oh, there, thank you.
So northeast corner, that would be the corner of Winston and 52. right?
Yes, and it is set back so that it will not be in the vision triangle of drivers or anything like that.
How far is it gonna be set back?
So our code requires that that you measure from the corner of the property back 30 feet in either direction, and you create a triangle to make sure that it's at least out of that triangle, because that's what you need.
So it's gonna be set back at least 30 feet
Yes.
from Winston and 30 feet from,
Yeah, and
Right.
outside of a triangle formed by those two dimensions. So it could theoretically be like 22 feet or something like that. But we have our code has a triangle in there so that way you can see around the corner.
And we left enough room for the future stoplight as well, so we wanted to make sure that we were being mindful of that.
okay, as far as the parapets that you're talking about, what does our ordinance normally require?
So our ordinance requires that you screen with a parapet wall, or if it's impractical to screen with a parapet wall, that you use a screen. And in this case, I would say it's probably impractical to screen with a parapet wall because of the sloped roofs and the amount of equipment. In this PUD, though, they're asking to go a step further and to use a fence along Walnut Trail, so that way they'd be able to guarantee they have a really good screening for the residents. If you do want to go that way, we will have to maybe make the ordinance subject to attorney review so he can make sure the language is in there correctly.
Well, the thing I'm concerned about is that a parapet, from how I understood it, on most of the buildings we have, is that you cover the equipment so they can't be seen by any angle, no
Right.
matter which way you're going. And I would think that we would want the same thing there, being it's right next to a residential area. I don't know if adding a 7-foot fence solves the problem of blocking the mechanics.
So the architect has, and I really just showed you the one simpler drawing, the architect did a number of studies to see how tall a fence would have to be to screen entirely from the, a resident standing in the backyard. And they determined that a 6-foot fence doesn't quite do it, but a 7-foot fence does,
I'm
on
also
top of a
concerned
berm.
about the front part, not the back part.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're screening it from the back part, that's one thing, but our ordinance requires that you screen all mechanics.
It does, yeah. So there's,
So I don't know why we would make an exception to this, being it's such a modern building that we're gonna have mechanics showing. And the gas station, we required them to hide everything, and they had to go through that expense to hide that also.
I had that.
So
So let
I'm
me,
not in favor of not covering all the mechanics where you can see some of it.
okay.
I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels, but that's what I'm looking at, if that's what our ordinance is.
So this little corner here is what you can see of the mechanical equipment from sort of the front angle. So it's this tiny little bit here, but yeah, there's other places where you can see a sliver of it. Katie did look into the idea of if you used I don't think you looked into the idea of using a parapet wall, because the parapet wall is not really
Does
practical
not
on
work
that
for the
building.
construction style.
But you did look into the option of doing
The
a
screening.
mechanical screen.
Yes, and when we look at the mechanical screens, the unfortunate reality of those is that you would still see all of the units. They would just have that decorative screen around them, and so we thought it was a better solution for the residents to be able to see just a straight solid fence without having to see the building. And we thought that might help too with light and just noise from the property. So we were trying to be mindful of all the different considerations that we would have for folks who might live in those homes that are south of the property.
No, again, I understand the part from the home, the residents there, but I'm concerned about the entire building. And then I don't care if you don't put the parapet wall on, but as long as you put something around the mechanics so you can't see it. And then also the, not the generator, you said that they would come up with something. I would want to see that totally,
Sure.
Screened.
couldn't see that.
And this is the landscape plan that's on the screen. So they have proposed landscaping. The only thing is, without knowing exactly how tall the generator is, we don't know how tall the landscaping has to be. The way our code is written, they have to have 85% screening. So we could definitely make sure that they added, I don't think this is gonna be quite 85% screening, because I think that it's gonna be a little bit of a taller generator given the size of the building. So we just wanna be able to say, all right, we took a good look at it, Katie, you gotta put in
85%
5 more arborvitae or something like
My
that.
concern is that, do we have something in there that indicates that what we're saying right now,
Yes.
that it's covered, that it's not being able to be seen?
We do.
And for quick clarification, you're referring to the transformer in the back of the
Right.
building,
Transformer,
correct? That's the
yeah.
transformer, right. That's part of standard code. It's gotta be covered by 85%.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about the roof.
The roof, though, did we make the schools do anything different?
Schools may have been a different situation.
I don't think we made the schools do anything, did we?
The
This
schools-
is a very similar facility.
The schools are zoned residential, so we probably did not have a reason to compel them to do it.
Would you put up the view from 52 that we think we'll have? Again,
Yeah.
that orange dot is, that dark little sliver is the mechanical that
Yeah.
maybe we'll be seeing that with ours. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, this little tiny area right there.
And I
If
see
you
a little-
were
I see-
coming to that area. So we went out, Ann and I went out this afternoon to Morris and took some pictures, because we knew that,
Mm-hmm.
we knew these questions were gonna come up, which we appreciated because we were able to go out and take some pictures. And I had to stand in just the right place to get that picture. And really, the front is the easier part to screen, because the building slopes to the south, and because you've got that gin in the front, and the gin in the front is taller, so it does a pretty good job of screening it. So I'm really not concerned too much about seeing it from Jefferson unless you were looking for it. It's the other ones that I think you need to be aware
The
of.
angle from the west, coming from the railroad tracks, is what you potentially have your potential biggest exposure. Is that correct?
That's your potential biggest exposure, and it's literally if you're standing on the ComEd lines.
On the fence that you're talking about to the south, you're putting a berm and a fence on top of the berm?
Yeah.
So how tall is that wall gonna be, all said and done?
So there will be about a 6-foot berm and then a 7-foot fence on top of it.
So that cuts off everything for those people looking to the north.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really fair to them either.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you look at your backyard, all you're gonna see is a wall, you won't see anything.
That's what we did to Home Depot. All the residents on Park Shore, they put a berm and all that in there to give the screening down there.
Is it that high?
They enjoy it on Park Shore. all the private yards in the back.
But the residents haven't seen this option, right? Because this wasn't in the packet
They
that went out with
haven't.
the
I mean,
public
this
hearing.
is, you know, it's probably a less expensive option, but it does offer a good amount of additional.
This was in, the Y came back with this as in tune to comments from planning and zoning.
My thought was if you're sending out public hearings, like normally you look at the packet and decide if you wanna come in, and people haven't seen this. And I guess can you go back to the drawing, like where the fence is? You're doing part of the south wall, and then how do you, like berms they slope at some point, right? And a lot of times this is gonna be one solid berm, that entire line, with a fence line that's even?
It's a pretty even berm. There's not a lot of undulation, but one of two things can happen if you have if you have undulation, you can either go with it or you can just make it solid at the top, and there's a little
Extend
bit
the
of a gap.
fence.
The other benefit to that wall that would take care of the south is sound from the road, correct? Because there is quite a bit of sound from 52 that it would protect the neighborhood from. So there's additional benefit beyond the sight line
Right.
that I'm seeing. Is
So-
that correct? Would
Well,
you say that's
one thing
correct?
to consider also, you're talking about townhouses that are 2 stories high.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna be able, it's not blocking the view from the second floor.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's a
Got
fair
the
argument.
Condos there are set 2 stories high also.
Yeah, but any residential house, you can look out your back window into a neighboring house. You can look out,
I don't care about.
we've got, but we've got properties all over. We've got plazas that you look out, we've got all kinds of plazas in town that you look out your second story window, you're looking at rooftop units. Apple Tree Park Place, right here on 52. You've got homes, matter of fact, right over by Shorewood Plaza. Any of those units that are in the second stories, they can look out and see what's on the roofs of those buildings. You know, expecting a facility, any facility for that nature, to screen a building from the second story, I think is a little unrealistic.
Well, I'm not talking about the fence, I'm talking about.
I'm saying looking from a second story building, I think is an unrealistic expectation.
Well, regardless of what you're saying, we require parapets to block mechanics. That's my concern.
We request screening, they're asking for a PUD for the variance on that. And that's the consideration that's at large right now.
But I'm concerned about it being screened so you cannot see it at all. That's my concern.
Okay.
I guess I should point out as well that a parapet wall screens from ground level. It doesn't screen from a second story window, because a parapet wall is essentially a false extension of the
I'm
wall.
more or less referring to a fence back there.
A fence, yeah.
It's the old fence.
Yeah. So the whole fence thing.
But that's still not gonna be applicable even from a second story of a building, you still are gonna potentially see a rooftop. And again, because the sight line's going to be, any screening for mechanicals is gonna be based off ground line. So you're gonna have an angle, you're gonna have a vision angle looking up. So potentially, if it's a flat roof, a potential builder only is required to put a 2 or 3 foot fence
No,
off. Hang on, let me finish. Your request was the requirement would be from the ground line. And a potential builder would only have to put a 2 or 3 foot screening mechanism on a roof to screen from a ground line. That still does not stop the screening, because that's not the requirement from a second story window of somebody's neighboring property.
Right, then we moved to a different thing. I was talking about that you can see, I was talking about the fence. I was referring to parapets where you cannot see the mechanicals. In the photograph you're showing there, you can see the mechanicals from the ground. Even though you only can see a little of it, you can still see it. That's my opinion. I will not vote for that other than block. It has something to screen the mechanicals totally. It's up to the rest of the board what they're doing. I don't want to, keep us talking about it, but that's my.
Not a problem. I just want to make sure we're all at same page, same expectations of what the ground line requirements are from site for screening requirements. They're always based from the ground line. They're not based off second story elevations.
You base from adjacent property based on a 6 foot tall person's eye level, and you base from the street based on somebody driving a car, is the typical standard.
See, now, I'm not talking about the houses seeing it. I'm talking about being able, if I'm walking down 52.
Sure.
I can see it. It has nothing to do with being the second story. We went to another subject about a fence. I'm talking about the parapet part, or whatever screening you want to use for it.
Very good. What's your question?
Screening, the compromise to this?
Potentially. I don't know
Yep,
if
so what was your question? Sorry.
I mean, we're going back and forth here, but wouldn't screening resolve the issue here?
Screening could potentially resolve the issue. We've got a couple of challenges with that. So the first is the cost of doing mechanical screens. The second is that what we heard from the intention was just being able to provide adequate screening so you wouldn't see the mechanicals. And the building really has truly been designed with the idea that the shape of the building, those roof lines, would provide for natural screening. So we don't believe that from all sides there's going to be a need for being able to have any additional screening around those units. We did hear the feedback from the south, and that's what we were trying to address with the trees. And we originally started with trees, and then we moved into the fence just to provide that full and complete screening to make sure that those residents would have just a clean view from the south looking north.
But I think Morris facility is a little different situation down there, because you're at the end of the street.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have anybody around you at all, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we're here, you do have neighbors and so forth, so it's really not the same thing.
Yeah, and I would say, again, from the three sides, you really don't have any units that you'll be able to see significantly. I know that Natalie took that one picture. I would say that 52 is about 100 feet further away. So when you look at the distance from the north end of the building to where we'd be standing on 52 or where someone would be in a vehicle, we're going to be quite a distance away from the building when you look at how far set back it is on the property. So something else to consider is that little sliver that you see is actually going to be even a little bit smaller when you think about that further distance away. So I do think that we're going to be adequately covered from the north, but that is certainly something we could look at from the south if the board feels strongly about that.
Did you say that Plainfield has no screening at all?
Plainfield has very limited screening, so there's actually only, I think, one
Yeah.
unit, that has any screening.
I've been there 10 times, and maybe I'm in a daze all the time. But I never see any of the mechanical stuff when I'm driving up to the building. I'm looking for a parking place, or, you know, if I'm driving down the street, I'm watching out for kids. I'm not looking up at buildings to see mechanical equipment. I'm sorry, I guess I'm just a weird individual. But I don't go around looking for that, so. I've been at Plainfield at least 10 times, 5 times with Watt, okay? And 5 times on my own. And I can't remember a thing up on top, so I guess, and that's only my opinion. It's my opinion.
Natalie, can we see that north view again, please, that sliver?
And I gotta tell you, I mean, I looked for that sliver, right? Like, I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
I did not miss
I mean,
anything that I was showing you guys.
It looks like an
Looks like
architectural,
part of the building.
it looks like a trim piece of the building, yeah.
It's,
I mean, I know that's not the exact view we're gonna get from facility here, but that's Morris, and that's from is that from a kind of a rough distance?
yeah, so I took it from, I would agree, it's going to be, like, the Morris Hospital YMCA facility is closer to the street, so where I took it from was the opposite side of the street, so I would picture this would be like if you took it from the, sidewalk on the south side of Jefferson. Personally, I don't think what you see from the front is all that concerning. It's really one unit, I believe it's the unit for the swimming pool, and you see a small amount of it if you look.
Can we approve this pending that part of it being brought back?
Probably not. I would defer to council. I don't think that's how that's gonna work.
I'll say this, I'm not concerned with something that looks like that.
I don't know what you make it pending, what do you bring back? I'm not quite sure.
Once those units are up on the roof, that they are what it looks like it's gonna be.
You mean to go after construction and
Well, not
then,
after
is that what you mean?
construction, but before they move in, yeah. I'm just asking.
That would be, I guess, pretty unusual. Because, I don't know, sometimes you just see them put fences, literally like cyclone fences with weave in on top of the roof, and those certainly don't look as nice as some of the units.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a unit on day 1, not on day 29 or year 29.
Yeah.
Katie, did you have a little presentation you wanted to give us?
Yeah, so we definitely have some information to share, and I don't.
Could
have
you,
I'm sorry, I'll
That's
look for you.
okay, no, that's.
could you maybe taper it down just a little bit,
Yeah,
instead of
we'll
the
go
hour and a
brief.
half you gave us at planning and zoning.
Absolutely. So everything is in the
Planning
building as
time is
we
thorough,
have,
huh?
as we have
Very.
discussed previously. So we know we've got the launch timeline, and Natalie, we can go through that pretty quickly, but we'll just continue to talk through the process that we've used. So over the course of the last couple of years, we know we've worked really collaboratively with the village to ensure that we're bringing a facility that we can all be incredibly proud of. We wanted to share that we are incredibly grateful for the work of the village staff, that we've had ongoing conversations to make sure to address as many concerns as are possible before we bring the project forward to the board. So just our deepest appreciation to both Noriel and to Natalie and her team as we've worked through that process. We're going to just show you a couple of pictures of the building. So as we mentioned before, this is an exterior, just a rendering of what the building would look like from the kind of north corner looking southwest. Again, just a reminder that it's going to be a brick building with glass and aluminum frames. So you can keep going, Natalie, and we can take a look at the front entrance of the building. So as you approach the building, you're going to see these beautiful big glass windows and have an inviting place to go. As we continue into the inside of the building, you're going to see a few pictures of just what the facility will look like. On the exterior front, there were some questions from planning and zoning about the dumpster enclosure. It will be a solid brick enclosure for the dumpster. And there were also some questions about the brick that would be on the sign outside. So that monument sign will have some brick available to match the building and tie in with the building really beautifully. The text in the font is going to change, so that is one thing we wanted to make sure and note. That was a question that was raised at the Village of Shorewood YMCA. The text will be a little bit different on the sign, but it's going to be a beautiful, just a brick sign with that LED screen. And as I mentioned, the dumpster enclosure is full brick. We've got some renderings of what the restroom and storage buildings will look like. Those are going to be, again, just a beautiful building that'll provide for adequate use of restrooms outside and then also storage. So that'll be a place where we would store supplies for our camp and sports programming. And then our future pavilion, you can see the finishes that have been selected for that. So we've got a roof that would be that dark bronze. We'd have a thatch interior roof, and then we'd have a frame color that's almond. So just a really natural looking shade structure that'll be available out behind the building. In terms of the plan overview, just as promised previously, we've got the lobby, the gathering spaces, youth and community rooms. We've got youth programming rooms, indoor track, the gymnasium, the lap pool, the wellness center, aerobic studio, everything that we've discussed previously. Again, just a view from the main entrance of the facility. So that black fenced-in area in the front is where the playground will go. So in the renderings, what you don't see is the landscaping, the playground feature. So those will be things that'll be in addition. So just to remember that while this is a rendering, it is a rendering of the building, but that doesn't include all of the beautiful landscaping that'll be around the facility. And then here's a view of the interior lobby of the facility. And you can just kind of click through these, Natalie. We've got some gathering spaces, youth program rooms. Again, these are images you've seen before. Our community and multi-purpose room, indoor gymnasium with a track. The indoor swimming pool, which is an 8-lane lap pool, our cycling studio, wellness center, which is where all of the group exercise classes will be housed, and then our space for free weights and mechanical equipment. So excited to have that space available for everybody as well. And just a reminder, by the numbers, we're looking to serve about 7,800 people out of the facility when we get opened. Our program and service expansion includes aquatics and youth programming. We've got a lot of fitness classes that'll be available as well. I think we're good now.
Yeah, that's the last
Yep.
one.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks good.
Question for Katie while she's here?
Would you be open to a standard in the PUD that would talk about dimming lights at night?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, because what are your
So
normal
we're
operating
going to
hours?
open from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then shortened hours on the weekends. But we can certainly look at dimming those lights at a certain hour. Absolutely.
Okay.
When you say look at, Katie, I think.
No, we
you
can
say-
put it in. We can put in that we will have.
That you will
yep,
do it,
Yep,
okay.
they'll have dimmer lights in the parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
A lot of these LEDs now are pretty easy to dim, they're
Yes.
dimmable,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then the only thing that I would ask is when you make a motion to be specific about whether you want to stay with the screening requirement, the mechanical screening requirement that was written up originally, or if you want to go to the fence requirement.
So
If you do make a recommendation this evening.
It's up for a first read, so no action be taken. You can sit on it for 2 weeks, or you can make a motion to approve with as the amendment is.
What does that do for the construction timeline?
Puts it 2 weeks behind. They're ready to dig foundations now, they're caught up.
And at
But
this
they
stage,
can't move forward until we make an approval.
My 2 cents on the fence, I'm worried about the looks, like why is it stops in the one corner, it doesn't go. I'm also kind of concerned that this came out to us an hour before this meeting, so the neighbors that are gonna look at a berm with a fence, so, a 13-foot structure in their backyard overnight, They haven't been able to give us comment on what they wanna look at. Do they want a fence? We think they want a fence to block the screening, but if we all agree all of a sudden that mechanicals don't matter to any of us, then maybe the neighbors would rather look at these mechanicals than look at a 13-foot fence and wall, I don't know. Because looking at kind of the street view from behind Home Depot, I've never seen that fence. It's not a pretty look. I mean, it's a dirt hill with a gap underneath a fence. Like, I don't know. And
I mean, it's not going, just for the record, it's not going back to planning and zoning though either. With the amended, with the fence, it doesn't go back to
this is just
planning.
my
No, but it doesn't go back to planning and zoning. That's,
Okay.
yeah. So, the Y made the adjustments based on feedback they got from planning and zoning. We're trying to find amenable methods to address those concerns.
What I like about the fence, is it 8 foot or 9 foot, Katie?
7 foot.
7 foot? And the architect determined that would screen.
That would screen, yeah, the 6 foot
What I like about that is
fence
I always
would-
wish we had more fence where I'm in a neighborhood by the gas station and we hear quite a bit of road noise. So berm there was behind the gas station, but going west, when that's eventually developed, would be great for our neighborhood. I like the idea of the sound deadening aspect of it as well for that neighborhood. So it's just not sight for me, I'm looking at it from a sound perspective too.
No, I'd be more concerned with, you are committed to cut the grass, right?
Yes, absolutely.
On the berm.
Yes. We'll fully maintain the whole site.
It's not something we haven't run into a problem on. Almost
Appreciate
everyone
that.
that ever got put up has been a problem.
We'll certainly take care of that, absolutely.
Okay,
because they already have a
that would be my only concern.
How does that work with the fence that's already there
What's that?
on the south end? So we're gonna put another fence up against that
That's
fence?
still, it becomes the Y's property, it's their responsibility.
Right, it would be quite set back though, because
Well,
the
I
new
mean,
fence
there's
would
a
go on
fence
top
there
of the
now.
berm, and you're gonna have a slope.
Yep, it's a
So
roughly
we're gonna-
between 20 and 30
who
feet
does-
from
who
one
does
fence to
between
the other.
The Y, it's their responsibility.
Okay.
And then trees would be on the hill?
Yep,
On
so
the berm?
we can allow some trees so that we can continue that kind of green view, absolutely.
So how wide is this berm?
The berm is approximately 6 feet wide at the top. So there's a pretty significant area for plantings along the fence.
Again, it's up for first read, whether anybody wants to motion it or sit on it to request further information, we can do either or.
I'd like to see a building go up before cold weather.
Yeah,
As do I.
So with that,
I'm with you.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve an ordinance granting a conditional use for a planned unit development, a conditional use for a health and fitness center, and site plan approval for Village of Shorewood YMCA, 1801 West Jefferson, and waive the second read.
I'll second that.
Did you want to include in that, Trustee Brockman, that the lights would be dimmed after hours, I guess?
If you could, please.
And then I guess, do you want the fence or not want the fence? I suppose you could wait on the fence and approve everything else, but
You know,
the
I think the
fence-
YMCA is going beyond, because nobody showed up at planning and zoning complaining about a fence, you know, needing more fence there. They've been looking at a 6-foot fence for 25 years, you know, in their own backyard. And they're going out of their way to put more fence in there. I don't think myself it's needed with that added expense, but if you want to put it in, that's your call, but,
So you made, Trustee Brock, for clarification, you made the motion, waiving the second read, recognizing that the lights would be reduced down and leaving the fence as screening on the berm,
what was the last part, fence?
fence on the berm,
Yeah,
the added fence to help screen from the residents.
and the one behind Lynn's is what, 6-foot fence, and the plantings, if they would have continued that berm and fence like I wanted them to do 10 years ago, I mean, the plantings now are completely hiding the houses from anything, you know, so.
Trustee Chapman, are you still second with that?
Yeah,
All right, so there's a motion by Trustee Brockman, second by Trustee Chapman, for the approval of the YMCA, waiving the second read as amended with the lights being dimmed down and carrying forward the proposed fence to add for screening. With that, move to roll call, please.
Point order. Are we voting for the screen or no screening? No screening?
It includes the screen. No, let me clarify. It
Yeah,
includes
clarify what
it
we're
includes the
voting
fence as proposed.
No, the parapet or the screen on the roof or no?
No, does not include that. All right, so the motion's been made, seconded by trustee Chapman, roll call.
Luciano,
No.
Selfridge,
No,
I'm sorry, what, that was a no.
that was no.
Amos,
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll,
No.
Chapman,
Yes.
and Mayor Cole.
Yes. All right, the building's approved. Business item number 4, be consideration for approval of a resolution accepting a grant of temporary construction easement to the Village of Shorewood for parcel, the PIN number is 050619-100-003. Trustee, Public Works Director Noriega.
Thank you, Mayor. So continuing as part of our alternate source water program, we continue to move forward. More specifically, our proposed 16-inch water main extension from our proposed pumping station at the Public Works site off of Mound all the way down to Walnut Trails Water Tower. Our proposed route requires a temporary easement from the Siegel family farm. That's the PIN number of 050619-100-003. The property is vacant and currently used as agriculture. Our water main will not be installed on this property. It is actually, the easement is only for ingress, egress for construction purposes, for them to be able to construct the water main. The easement grant has already been approved by the Siegel family and executed by them. So staff is recommending approving the resolution accepting the plan of easement grant for the temporary construction easement to the Village of Shorewood for the property identified as 050619-100-003. Any questions?
Any questions for Noriel on that?
I'll make a motion for the approval of a resolution accepting a grant of temporary construction easement to the Village of Shorewood for PIN number 050619-100-003.
Second.
Motion Selfridge, second Carroll. Roll call, please.
Selfridge,
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
and Luciano.
Yes.
All right, business item number 5 will be consideration for approval of a proposal from Arbortech Services in the amount not to exceed $35,000 for our annual tree pruning program and waive the formal bid process. Public Works, again.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is again for our annual tree trimming program. Arbortech continues to hold their price. They've been our contractor that's been doing our annual tree trimming program for well over a decade. And they're holding their price from last year. Our budget allows for $35,000 for the program, which equates to about 686 trees to be trimmed this winter. Staff is recommending the village board waive the bid process and award the contract to Arbortech Services in the amount not to exceed $35,000 for our annual tree trimming program. Any questions?
Any questions on tree trimming again?
I'll make a motion for the approval of a proposal from Arbortech Services in the amount not to exceed $35,000 for our annual tree pruning program and waive the formal bid process.
Second.
Motion in Selfridge, second trustee Carroll. Roll call, please.
Amos.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
And Selfridge.
Yes.
All right, business item number 5 has been approved. Moving into our department reports. For those of you that do not know, we do have a new chief building official here, Mr. Bob Steriati. Some of you may recognize Mr. Bob. Some of you may not.
No report.
I like this guy.
Wow. Way to come in with a bang, sir. With that, we'll move over to community development.
No report either.
Thank you. Finance,
No report.
at this time. Parks,
Good evening. Just a couple of quick reminders. Our Barbecue and Brews makeup date is this Saturday at Town Center Park from 12 to 6 p.m. We'll have craft beers for people to sample, barbecue trucks, other food trucks, and then live music to listen to. Autumn Fest presented by Coldwell Banker will be taking place on Sunday, October 20th, again here at Town Center. That'll be from 2 to 4 p.m. and will feature our annual trunk or treat. We'll have pumpkins to give away as supplies last, and hayrack rides and more. And then we are also still accepting vendors for the upcoming holiday market. That will be the first weekend of December. If you're interested in participating, please email us at the Parks Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to report that we received our first set of evaluations for our 3 new officers from the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy. All supervisor comments are very good for all 3 of them. One has already taken on a leadership role and has been voted as a vice president of the class by his peers, so that's very good. Also want to report that on September 21st, we had our National Night Out event at Four Seasons Park. Despite it being an unseasonably hot day, not what we were expecting, it was a very good turnout, good show for the families that came out. Everyone had a good time, and we also raised over $1,200 for Special Olympics Illinois. Any questions?
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move over to Public Works.
Just one update, our leaf pickup program begins next week.
It's that time, huh?
It is that time.
All right. Administrator.
So in addition to hiring Mr. Steriati for the chief billing official, we filled the part-time vacancy created in the Parks Department. That person will start here in a couple of weeks, but that, if you remember, Vinny left, Kate Dorick moved into Vinny's full-time position, so we've filled that position. Her name's Sabrina, I forget the last name, forgive me, but she'll be around at events coming this fall. Also, the application phase for the police department clerk's position is closed. They're doing interviews this week. They'll probably have a selection done either late this week or early next week. So the only other vacancies will be posted on the website. We're still looking for a licensed water operator, and we'll keep looking.
Thank you. With that, move into trustee comments. Trustee Amos.
Just a quick comment. Congrats on the hiring of needed individuals here, Aaron. Good job. No other comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Brock.
Thank you, Mayor. Other than the 3 agenda items, I want to thank Natalie for yeoman's work on all that. A lot of hard work. And other than that, no report.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Carroll.
No comment.
Thank you. Trustee Chapman.
No comment.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Luciano.
Citizens Advisory Committee for October has been canceled. There will be no meetings in November and December because of the holidays. So the next Citizens Advisory Committee meeting will be January 23rd, 2025. As always, if anyone's interested in getting involved in the committee, they can contact myself or any of the other members through the village website. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trustee Selfridge.
Thank you. Even though I was a no vote to item number 3, I do want to thank the Y for trying to be a good neighbor and agreeing to that light dimming request. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. With that, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, Trustee Amos.
Second.
Second, Trustee Selfridge. Roll call, please.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
And Amos.
Yes.
All right.